So in the theory video, we have seen what is exception and different types of exceptions. So let's try to implement that in this video. So let's talk about the first type of exception, which is unchecked. Whenever you have an exception, your compiler is not specifying that that's an exception. But example, if I say int I equal to 9 divided by 0. Now, even if this line will give you exception, but it will show it at on runtime, your compiler will not notify you about this exception. So now if I run this code, you can see we are getting, okay, so we can see we got the exception, which is arithmetic exception divided by 0. If I try to print anything after that, if I say system.out.println, and if I want to print by, and if I run this code, you can see as soon as I run this code, it is breaking the execution. As soon as you get the exception, it will break the execution and it will directly print the error. It is not printing by, right? So that means we are not handling the exception. In your software, exception may arise. So it is your responsibility to handle it. Basically how we handle the exception. So the way we do it is with the help of try catch. Let me just write this outside because I don't want this inside. So I will use a try catch. So try is a block where you have to put all your critical statements. Example, this statement here, this is a normal statement, and this one is critical. Now why it is critical is because it may throw an exception. If it is throwing an exception, it is your responsibility to catch it. Okay, so this try block will throw the exception and catch block will catch the exception. It throws the object of exception. So this line will throw the object of exception. So you have to accept the object of exception. Once it calls the exception and the catch block, we can print there was some error. I don't know what's the error. So if I run this code now, you can see instead of printing that weird red line error, it is giving you a black text as error and it is printing by. Now if you want this error to be in red color, you can simply use err.println. Now what is err? Err represents error, so that your output will be in red color. Okay, that looks good, right? So we got an error and we are also printing by. But just to make it simple, we'll use out itself. So we got error and we also got by. So when you try to run this code, and if this line gives you an exception, it will directly jump here and it will print by. Now let's say if I have a variable which is int I is equal to 7, and then we have int j equal to 2, and this is a new variable k, which is I divided by j, and I want to print the value of k. I will say output is, and then I will print k. And if I run this code, you can see since there is no error, we are not dividing a number by 0, we are dividing a number by 2. So 7 divided by 2 will give you 3, right? The output is 3 and it is also printing by. But as soon as you make your j as 0, what will happen is it will, when you try to divide the number by 0, it will throw an exception. As soon as it throws the exception, it will not print this line. As soon as you get the exception is in this line, it will directly jump on catch block. If you can say this, you got the output as error and by. So it is not printing this. So as soon as you get the exception, it will directly jump into the catch block. Now if you remember, if you run this without try catch, it is throwing arithmetic exception, right? So you can be specific here. You can say it throws an arithmetic exception. Instead of using exception, we can also use arithmetic, because specifically this line is throwing arithmetic exception. And if you click on arithmetic exception here, it's a subclass of runtime exception. If you can see that, again we have seen this in theory, right? So we have arithmetic exception is a subclass of runtime exception. If you click on runtime exception, it's a subclass of exception. Now if I go back here, instead of using exception, I can also use arithmetic exception because it throws an arithmetic exception. And if you run this code, everything works fine. What if I want to print by? Okay, so let's say if I want to put everything in a try block. Now will that work? If you run this code, it is only printing error, right? Is because when you get the exception on this line, it will directly jump to catch. It will not execute these two lines. So I want to print by. So what I will do is I will get a clone of by and I will paste that line in catch itself. So we have by here and we have by here. Now why we need by in both the thing is because if you get error here, it will execute the by of catch block. If you don't get the error here, it will execute the by of this block. So if you don't get the error, why it will jump to catch block, right? If you run this code, it works. You're getting by. But don't you think we're writing the same statement two times? We're writing by here, we're writing by here. So this is like code redundancy. If you follow the good coding standards, it says that we should not we should not repeat the code, because redundancy is a crime and we don't want to be a criminal, right? So make sure you don't use by in two places. So what you can do is, if you're only if what you want to do is, even if you get the error or not, you want to print by, right? So we have one more block with try catch, which is called as finally block. So if you write something in finally block, if you write something here, we don't have to write it two times. So what is finally block is, finally is a block which will get executed even if you are getting the exception or not getting the exception. So if I run this code, you can see we are getting by, and if I change the value to 2, the j value, if I run this code, it is printing by. So in both the scenarios, even if you are getting the exception or not, it will print by because it is finally block. So finally block executes in both the situations, in the normal situation as soon as as well as in the error near situation. So that's about try, catch, and finally. So in the next video, we'll talk about multiple catches. That's it from this video. Thank you so much.